was supposed to be one of, if not the very last delivery of the night for me. I was working at this pizza place called Leonardo's. One of my managers, Frank, was on the night shift with me. He was the one who decided, who handled which delivery. We got an order come in for a couple of regular pizzas, and he handed me a slip of paper with the address and the customer's phone number written on it. This was back in 2009. I didn't have a phone with GPS, just a basic flip phone. I also didn't own one of those Garmin navigation devices. I was still relying on an old-school map book to find my way around on deliveries. The name of the street where this last delivery was headed was something along the lines of Willow Road. I can't recall the exact house number or the name the order was placed under, but what I do remember is having an incredibly difficult time tracking the place down. It was out in this really rural area with nothing around but woods, farmland, and more woods. The complete lack of street lights didn't make things any easier. I had to pull over a few times, flip on the interior light, and check the map again. It was one of those genuinely stressful situations that came with the job whenever a house just refused to be found, that I was crawling down this very quiet, dark, and disorienting road when I finally decided to just call the number on the paper. The phone rang and rang. There didn't seem to be any voicemail set up on the line. It must have rung close to 10 times before someone finally picked up. I waited for them to say something. When nobody did, I went ahead and said hello, and then a voice on the other end said it back. It was low and deep, but also oddly soft. I told them I was the pizza delivery guy, and that I was having a hard time locating the place. He explained that his driveway was easy to miss, and that it looked like little more than a dirt trail. He spoke in this slow, flat, monotone way as he described the landmarks around his driveway to help me find it. Eventually, I turned my car onto this pretty narrow dirt path. He wasn't kidding, it was absolutely easy to drive right past. I crept slowly and carefully up the trail for about 30 seconds before a small one-story house came into view. There was a faint orange glow coming from inside, visible through one of the windows. I parked next to the only other vehicle out there, this beat-up old pickup truck. I grabbed the 2 pizza boxes from the passenger seat and walked up to the front door. I looked around for a doorbell, couldn't find one, so I knocked. I could hear muffled music coming from inside. Then I heard footsteps approaching the door, and then they stopped. After maybe 10 seconds, the door cracked open just enough for me to see a quarter of someone's face. Literally just one eye peeking out at me through the gap. I nervously said, "Hey, you ordered the pizza, right?" The guy said, "Oh yes, the pizza." I recognized his voice from the phone call. There was this strange pause, and the only thing I could think to say was, "Do you have the cash?" He said, "Yes, let me go get it," and walked away from the door. I heard his footsteps move off into another room. There was super old music playing, like something out of the 1930s, which made the whole setting feel even more eerie than it already was. Then the door started slowly swinging open on its own, gradually revealing more of this dimly lit room. Everything about the interior looked incredibly dated. There were metal sheets laid across the floor, presumably covering up holes underneath. The couch looked like it belonged in a completely different era, and honestly, so did all the other furniture. The music was coming from a vintage record player, one of those old ones with the large horn attachment on top. That was about all I could make out from my nosy peek inside, but what really unsettled me more than anything was the smell. It smelled like death in there. I waited patiently for the guy to come back with the money. When enough time had passed that it started to feel genuinely strange, I knocked on the open door, leaned in slightly, and called out, "Sir." His voice came back from another room saying, "Yes, would you mind coming into the kitchen, please?" My co-workers and managers had always drilled it into me never to step inside a customer's house unless you absolutely had to. That advice felt more relevant in that moment than it ever had before. I heard what he said, but I still replied, "Sorry, can you say that again?" He repeated it. "Can you come to the kitchen, please?" I stepped inside, and I honestly felt like my feet were going to go straight through the floor. The place was so worn down that the floorboards actually gave slightly under my weight as I moved. The house had a very straight, linear layout. I looked to my right and could see the opening to the kitchen where his voice was coming from. I looked to my left, and there was a narrow hallway lined with several doors along the right side. At the very end of that hallway, there was a figure with his back to me, slowly dancing in the most unsettling way I have ever witnessed. The man was touching himself, and I don't mean that in a confident, feeling himself kind of way. I mean he was literally running his hands over his own body while moving in this deeply disturbing manner. Under any other circumstances I might have laughed, but I was completely rattled by what kind of house I had just walked into. I turned away and focused back toward the kitchen, still holding both pizza boxes, that I took a few steps in that direction before I even noticed the face peering around the edge of the wall that divided the kitchen from the living area. It was the same man, still only showing about a quarter of his face. Just that one eye, creepily fixed on me from around the corner. The only thoughts running through my head in that moment were, what the hell is going on, and should I just leave right now? I repeated what I had said at the front door, asking him again whether he had the cash. The man didn't respond. Instead, he started to laugh, though I'm not even sure laugh is the right word for it, because the sound was so deep in pitch yet so quiet and subtle. Then suddenly he called out a name, Randall, in this startlingly loud and commanding voice that was completely at odds with the soft, slow way he had spoken up until that point. That was my limit. I had hit the ceiling on how much of this I could take. I turned around and started walking straight back toward the front door. As I passed the hallway and glanced down it on my way out, I noticed the guy who had been dancing just moments before was now completely still, just standing there at the end of the hall, staring back at me. I walked out the front door and pulled it closed behind me. I hurried back to my car, somehow still holding both pizza boxes. I tossed them onto the passenger seat and got myself inside as fast as I could. As I was backing up to clear the pickup truck beside me so I could do a 3-point turn and get out of there, I glanced back at the house. The front door was wide open again. My heart started hammering at the thought that one of them might be outside and about to try the car door. Maybe they were. I'll never know for certain. But I got that car back down the dirt path and out onto the road that I had to drive straight back to the pizzeria. I called Frank on the way to fill him in on what had happened. He wasn't upset with me at all. When I got back and told everyone the full story, they all laughed. And I get it, I really do. Hearing it told out loud, it probably sounds more absurd than terrifying. But it was not funny in the moment. Whatever was happening inside that house was not normal, and I honestly don't think those people ever had any real intention of buying pizza. I've had multiple dreams since then where I see that man's face just slowly peering around the edge of a wall. After that night, I made a firm decision to never step inside a customer's home or apartment again while on a delivery.